So I was reading through this book titled The Smithsonian Book of North American Indians Before the Coming of Europeans, and I really like this book because it's full of pictures of Native American artifacts. And one page in particular that caught my eye is some artifacts made by the Aztecs. They have the crystal skulls and little carved images, and I really like this knife. This Aztec knife is so fascinating to me because it has a razor sharp stone blade and then a wooden handle that is carved in the shape of an eagle warrior. Eagle warriors were very respected in the Aztec culture because their job was to go out and collect human slaves to be used in human sacrifice to cut out their hearts. And this knife handle is decorated with a mosaic of turquoise and shells and malachite ore. So they spent a lot of time making this knife and knife handle, and I think it would be a fun project. So in this video we're going to try to reproduce this Aztec Eagle Warrior mosaic handle knife. So the first thing I like to do when I recreate these artifacts, such as this Aztec knife, is to draw a picture to try to get scale on the size. So I took a block of wood and started carving in the rough shape and came up with this. It's not an exact match, but it's pretty close in form and shape. So I'm going to make this my own knife in the style of the Aztec knife. But for now, it's ready, now that I have the handle done, to Flint Nap the Blade. And we know the blade is approximately this shape and this size. And the tang that you can't see in the handle, it was x-rayed, is just a very narrow point. This indicates that this was not used in actual sacrifice, but mostly ceremony. If it was actually used in a sacrifice for cutting out hearts, it would have probably had a longer tang that would have secured the blade better. And so we're going to Flint Nap the blade now. As you can see in this picture of the original knife, the blade is made out of white flint or white chert. I don't have any white flint, so I'm going to Flint Nap this blade out of a piece of obsidian, which is razor sharp. So it's going to be a black blade instead of a white blade, but it's going to be Flint Napped in the exact same way. Basically, we're going to Flint Nap this large obsidian rock by striking it with rocks and antler, the same way they've done for thousands of years. So here's the hammerstone I'm going to use to break apart this obsidian rock. This is just a smooth river rock I found down in the creek, and I've been using it quite a bit, so it's starting to get pecked and wore down on one end. But you just find places that you can hit along the edge and break this larger piece of obsidian apart. That's what we're looking for, is just to be taking these large flakes that we can make bifaces out of. There's a ridge running along here, so I should be able to break off a pretty good piece. That might be just what we're looking for. Let's start working it and see what we can make out of this blade, see if we can get one long enough. So what I'm going to be doing is taking off some of these thinner edges, lightly tapping them with the antler to break off that sharp edge, and then I'm going to be striking it and taking larger flakes off so that this piece gets pretty thin. You also want to be grinding your platforms with a rock so that it's nice and dull and doesn't crumble when you hit it with the antler, and that energy will go in through here and start thinning the biface. I'm just going to keep taking flakes off of it to thin the piece and so that it starts taking shape like the blade we want for our Aztec knife. It's already starting to get pretty thin, as you can see here. That's going to be just perfect. So our blade's really starting to come together. I got flakes going along both edges, and it's really starting to take shape. I think it will be just the right size and will be perfect for this knife. So here's our completed blade. I even put a little chip in the top that the original had. So overall, I think it turned out really well. The blade fits in well with the handle, and I think it's a pretty close match to what we were trying to get here. And this edge is just razor sharp. It would be great for cutting flesh, or we'll cut this leather pad right in half. Obsidian is just so sharp. So now that we have our knife blade all napped, we're ready to work on the handle. The original wood that was used to make the handle was darker, so I'm going to actually stain my handle a darker color with the stain and then start decorating it. And the way they decorated it was they made a mosaic with shells and stones and glued it on with pine pitch glue. The stones they used were turquoise, this bluish color, and then malachite ore, which is this, it's the crystal form, and that's a copper ore. And then they decorate it with three kinds of shells. They decorated it with spiny oyster, white conch, and mother of pearl. I have mother of pearl, but I don't have the other two, so I'm going to substitute for whatever shells I can find. And then they also wrapped the handle here with agave cordage. So I got some cordage here to wrap the handle. And to make this wooden handle darker, I'm just using standard wood stain that you get at the hardware store. Now that we have our handle all stained darker, we're ready to start adding the mosaic of turquoise and shells. I'm going to glue on the mosaic with pine pitch glue. This black stuff here is simply pine pitch mixed with charcoal from the fire. And I'm going to heat it up, and it becomes very sticky, and piece by piece we'll glue on each little turquoise and shell. Once that pine pitch cools, it's pretty stuck on there, so as long as it doesn't get too hot, that turquoise is going to be held on nice and tight to the knife handle. So I found it easier to just cover the whole handle with pine pitch glue and then heat up the area where you're going to install the shells in turquoise and press it in, and it seems to work pretty well. I've finished gluing the turquoise and shells on the knife handle on both sides, so the last step is to glue in the obsidian knife blade and then wrap this part of the handle with the agave cordage. Now that I got the knife blade glued on with the pine pitch glue, the last step is to wrap the agave cordage, and then we're done. To start this process, I'm first going to glue the end of the cordage on with a little bit of pine pitch glue, and then I can wrap it. And here's my completed Aztec Eagle Warrior Mosaic handle knife with a razor sharp obsidian blade. I'll put a link in the description below to show you the original knife. It was much more finely crafted in the Mosaic. They spent a lot of time gluing on each little piece and shaping it. But overall, this was a fun project. I like to look at old artifacts and try to reproduce them, and this was definitely a challenge. If you like this kind of thing, please check out my channel and subscribe. I'm also going to give this knife away in a future video just as a thank you. I almost have 10 million views on my channel, and that's a huge number. I'm surprised how fast this has grown, and I want to say thank you. So stay tuned and you could win this knife. Thanks for watching.